Welcome back to the nostalgic future.
You know, I still really love to play Gamecube and Wii. I still keep a completely hacked up Wii just to serve that purpose. I even keep a bunch of backed up ROMs on an external SSD. But you know, that brings us to a really important detail about Wii emulation that's really hard, and that's sourcing Wii ROMs. It's really difficult to find a good website that sources Wii ROMs. In which case, I really recommend having a real Wii and ripping ROMs off of the discs that you really have, because it not only is the fastest way, but the easiest way to source ROMs. But first, let's take a look at Gamecube. And before we get started here, let's go ahead and jump straight into the settings. I'm going to go ahead and show you the graphics settings that I use. So Vulkan is the video backend. I'm going to have the FPS on this entire time. Shader compilation mode, just the default. I like to compile shaders before starting. And then aspect ratio, stretch to window. Internal resolution, again, just based on the screen size of this phone, I think 1x is good. Full screen anti-aliasing, 2x. Filtering, 2x. Post-processing, FXAA. I almost always use FXAA on everything anyway. And then back-end multi-threading enabled if you have Vulkan enabled. Okay, so let's take a look at Mario Kart Double Dash. Now, I really wish that I could get this emulator to go 4:3, but I can't seem to figure this one out, at least yet. So this one is going to be 16:9. And also, I want to try and play through the whole first race in a 50cc Grand Prix, just so you can at least get a touch of an idea of what the performance is like over the course of some time here. And actually, I'm just going to choose Classic Mario Luigi, Basic Kart, Mushroom Cup, and while I can't really call this emulation 100% perfect, just because it does maybe drop a single frame every once in a while. If you back up and re-watch this level starting right from the beginning, you might see just maybe 1 or 2 frames drop. And that was in reality. But the majority of the race, 99%, is just as smooth as you'd hoped it would be. The audio quality is also very good. And it does not cut very often. I'm actually a little bit more surprised with at least maybe the way they implemented latency with this emulator, but its audio normally always stays right on time. And that's the most, game-breaking thing, if you will, to me, is if the audio starts cutting. I can handle a frame dropping or something like that, but it really separates me whenever the audio starts cutting. But that's just me. But yeah, as far as just picking it up and playing a game, the performance is there. And the level of performance I've been seeing really stays pretty steady across the board. It doesn't really seem to matter that much if I back some of my visual settings up. It seems to run the exact same way. So I don't think the problem is power. Also, it doesn't seem to make much difference if I put the phone on, say, high performance processing mode. It doesn't really seem to give it that just small bump that you'd hope it would. This just seems to be the overall performance of this emulator. Because it really does feel like the hardware in this phone is giving the best case scenario to this app, if that makes sense. It doesn't seem to be something that has to do with this processor or anything physically. And the same is true whenever I switch graphic backends also. OpenGL and Vulkan both seem to have 99% accuracy. it doesn't really seem to matter much, at least on this phone, using either one of those back ends. But I've got to say, overall, it does work very well. And the games are fun to play. And we can get a little bit better picture out of it through the use of the filters. Not to mention, I love the fact I'm sitting here using a real OEM Gamecube controller also. If you happen to have one of those little USB adapters, it totally works with Dolphin. Which means playing Smash Bros. Melee on this is the most satisfying thing ever. But it's just about time to switch gears. Let's take a look at Nintendo Wii. Now, I'm gonna be honest. As far as emulating Wii is concerned, it's probably the most complicated system you'll ever try to emulate. So I'm really only gonna cover this Mario game here because I ripped it straight from my Wii and because I can show you the exact controls and how to set them to actually play it on here. You're gonna notice quickly at every game you play, you're gonna be setting very specific settings for each one. As far as this one is concerned, you're going to want to set button number 2 as your main action button, and button number 1 as, say, B. And then you can put just about everything else wherever you want, but the most important thing is to remember when you set up, down, left, right, you need to rotate your controller, because the Wii is going to anticipate you rotating that Wiimote sideways. So make sure and compensate for that. The easiest games are obviously the ones that only use the Wiimote, or ones that use GameCube or classic controllers. Anything to avoid the IR input and the accelerometers. Those are going to be the hardest types of games to configure the inputs for. So let's take a nice look at Super Paper Mario. Luckily, at least, this is one of the few Wii games that is supposed to be 16:9, so it doesn't upset me that much not being able to switch to 4:3. And you'll notice the Wii emulation is exactly the same as the GameCube emulation. Especially on a simpler game like Super Paper Mario, this one does run at 100%, or at least close enough to it not to notice a drop. Just like, say, Beautiful Joe, which is kind of 2.5D, runs perfectly on Dolphin. I don't really notice a skip on it either. But it's a little bit simpler than, say, Metroid Prime. But again, I mean, really, overall, as long as you can get the right type of format and the right ROM, and you can figure out a way to configure your controls for whichever game you're trying to play, then Wii emulation is pretty seriously good on Dolphin. But you'll always have to remember that you're going to have to work for it every time. And you know, it all really makes a lot of sense. The Wii side of it runs just as well as the GameCube side of it. Just like how the Wii really is almost the same as a GameCube. There's just a few minor updates to that chip and those boards. But fundamentally, it's just a built-up GameCube. So of course, the Wii emulation on Dolphin is just about as good or completely equal to its GameCube emulation. And I'd really love someone to comment if there's a way to connect Wiimotes to Android phones nowadays. I know I did that a really long time ago, maybe like Android Lollipop days or a little bit earlier. And it seems like that ability has been patched out through Bluetooth updates, like hardware updates. So I'd be really interested if there's a way to do that, and I'm just like completely oblivious to it. Because if you add that ability with Dolphin, that would fix all of the intricacies with all of the settings for each individual game if you want to try to play Wii games. But it seems like I'm running out of time here. So I appreciate every single one of you, especially the ones who stuck around this long. In my next video, I'm going to go ahead and show off how to hack your Wii and how to get the Homebrew launcher installed, with lots of good links that still work in 2021 for all the apps. And until next time, I hope to see you back on
The Nostalgic Future.